When Ethan Brooks heard the sound of breaking glass, it was 2:47 a.m., and he was alone in his dark, sparsely furnished apartment. His heart skipped a beat. His left hand instinctively moved towards his nightstand, reaching for his Glock. He wasn't sure what had woken him, the glass breaking or the eerie feeling that someone had been watching him even before that. Years of working with Interpol's covert operations team had taught him to trust his instincts, and tonight, his instincts were screaming. Slowly, he got out of bed, eyes adjusting to the shadows in his room, every nerve in his body alert. He moved cautiously, rolling his feet along the hardwood to avoid creaking sounds as he approached the source of the noise. Through the door crack, he could see the vague outline of his shattered kitchen window and hear the faint sounds of movement. Two figures dressed in black were in his living room. Their features were masked, but the way they moved spoke volumes. They were trained. Special ops level, maybe even elite mercenaries. The fact that they were here, in his apartment in Paris, meant one thing: someone wanted him dead. Ethan couldn't afford to hesitate. Without another thought, he raised his Glock and took aim. A single muffled shot cracked through the silence as he squeezed the trigger. One of the figures dropped to the floor. The second intruder turned, but Ethan's shot was faster, and the man crumpled before he could retaliate. He didn't waste time investigating who they were. Instead, he scanned the room for anything they might have planted, any device or evidence left behind. But as he swept his gaze across the room, a shimmer caught his eye. There, on his table, was a sleek black envelope with an embossed symbol, a circle bisected by a lightning bolt. The insignia of the Black Lotus, a notorious shadow organization that had operated in the criminal underworld for decades. An organization he thought had been dismantled years ago. The implications hit him like a punch to the gut. Ethan remembered the last time he encountered them, in a mission that had nearly cost him his life. He'd been sent to recover sensitive intelligence on a biochemical weapon the group was rumored to have developed. Although he'd escaped with his life, the mission had ended in chaos, and Interpol's task force had suffered heavy casualties. The Black Lotus was no ordinary criminal syndicate, it operated with high-level support and military precision. Why would they want him now? And how had they even found him? He was officially dead, or at least that's what his files said. After the incident in Bolivia 2 years prior, Interpol had given him a new identity, wiping his records clean and placing him on permanent leave. Only a select few knew he was still alive. The envelope lay like a viper on his table, daring him to open it. He picked it up, feeling its surprising weight. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and when he unfolded it, his eyes fell on a short, chilling message: "Our past mistake will soon be corrected. Come to Rome if you want answers." He didn't need to think twice. The last time the Black Lotus had left a message like this, he'd lost 2 close friends. Rome, then. He'd be ready. The next evening, Ethan arrived in Rome, blending seamlessly into the bustling crowds that swarmed the city's ancient streets. The note had given no address, no meeting spot, just a city. But he knew they'd find him. He was barely 2 blocks from the Colosseum when he noticed a woman, tall and striking, following him from a distance. She kept her pace casual, but her gaze was intense. There was no mistaking her, she moved with the trained subtlety of an agent. Ethan ducked into a narrow alley and waited. Within seconds, she rounded the corner. He had his gun out, pressing it to her ribs before she could react. "Who sent you?" he whispered harshly, keeping his voice low. "The same people you're here to find," she replied without flinching, her voice steady. "But I'm not here to kill you." She pulled a crumpled envelope from her pocket and handed it to him. Keeping his eyes on her, he opened it. Inside was a single photograph, a grainy image of a small, glass vial with a green liquid inside. Beneath the photo was a simple instruction: find the vial, or the world dies. His mind raced. The Black Lotus's biochemical weapon. He thought it had been a myth, an exaggeration to keep people fearful. But if this photo was real, it meant the weapon was not only real but operational. The woman cleared her throat, her tone softening. "My name is Sofia Romano. I work with Interpol. I was undercover with Black Lotus for 2 years. They're going to use the vial, Ethan. This time, they're ready." "How do you know they won't just kill us both?" "They would have killed me if I hadn't escaped with this," she whispered, revealing a small data drive. "Everything I know is on here. They're going to release it in 3 days. We need to get this to Interpol, now." Ethan felt a chill sweep over him. "Where's the vial?" She hesitated. "Vienna. The headquarters of a pharmaceutical front company, BioCure. They plan to release it through their distribution network, infecting millions within days. Their mission was clear: intercept the weapon before the Black Lotus could unleash it." The next day, they were on a private flight to Vienna. Ethan tried not to let his thoughts drift to what would happen if they failed. The implications were terrifying. Sofia's intel indicated that the weaponized virus could trigger a mass pandemic with a nearly 100% fatality rate. If released, humanity itself would hang in the balance. As their plane landed in Vienna, the sense of urgency became overwhelming. They had a narrow window of opportunity, and BioCure's headquarters was as fortified as a military base. They rented a car and drove in silence, each lost in thoughts about what lay ahead. The plan was deceptively simple: they would infiltrate the BioCure building under the guise of employees and locate the vial. That night, dressed in the stolen uniforms of BioCure lab technicians, they slipped into the building. Every step through the sterile corridors made Ethan's heart pound faster. The facility was eerily quiet, with surveillance cameras rotating mechanically above them, reminding them they were on borrowed time. Finally, they reached the lab. Through the glass walls, they saw it, the vial, resting inside a containment unit. They were close, but before Ethan could reach the containment unit, a voice echoed over the intercom. "Well done, Ethan. I see your instincts haven't dulled." The voice was smooth and chillingly familiar: Lucian Keller, head of the Black Lotus. "But did you really think I'd leave my prize unguarded?" As the last word left his lips, the room flooded with armed guards. Ethan and Sofia pressed their backs against each other, outnumbered but resolute. "Any last words?" Keller taunted over the intercom, clearly savoring his supposed victory. But Ethan had one last trick. He pulled a small, cylindrical device from his pocket and threw it toward the guards. A bright flash and a deafening bang disoriented them, buying him and Sofia the few seconds they needed. They leapt toward the vial, securing it and racing toward the exit as alarms blared throughout the facility. But their escape wouldn't be that easy. Keller's men pursued them relentlessly through the corridors, gunfire echoing through the building. They fought back, but ammunition was running low, and they could hear footsteps closing in. Outside, they sprinted for the car, every step feeling heavier as Keller's men gained ground. Finally, they reached the vehicle and sped away, Keller's guards close behind in pursuit. With the BioCure vial secured, they hurtled toward the airport. Just when they thought they might have escaped, one of Keller's SUVs rammed their car. Ethan struggled to keep control, veering toward the airport entrance. Sofia clutched the vial tightly, her knuckles white. Then, in a final desperate move, they managed to shake the last SUV just as they reached the terminal. They boarded a departing plane, the vial safely tucked away. Only once they were airborne did the magnitude of what they had achieved settle in. They had saved millions, and although the threat of the Black Lotus still loomed, they had dealt them a significant blow. As the sun rose, Ethan leaned back, allowing himself a rare moment of relief. But he knew better than anyone that in his line of work, peace was always temporary. Detective Sarah Cross had always lived for the thrill of a challenging case, but she never expected one would bring her to the heart of the Amazon rainforest. The string of high-profile disappearances over the past 6 months, ranging from investigative journalists to environmental activists, all pointed to one place, a secluded research base under the ownership of Novalife Laboratories. Hidden deep within the dense jungle, the base operated under the guise of ecological research, but rumors circulated about far more sinister activities. Some said they were testing genetic modifications. Others said they were creating bioweapons for the highest bidder. Sarah had been chosen specifically for this mission because of her background in undercover operations and her reputation for getting to the truth no matter the cost. Equipped with minimal gear and assuming the role of an environmental researcher, she arrived at the compound by helicopter, feeling every inch of the jungle's hostility in secrecy pressing in on her. The sweltering heat, the buzz of insects, and the feeling of eyes watching her from every corner made her skin prickle. From the start, she knew Novalife Laboratories was no ordinary research facility. The compound was a steel fortress hidden among the thick canopies and muddy terrain. Towering guard posts stood at the perimeter, and armed personnel patrolled the area, their gazes intense and unwavering. For a company supposedly focused on ecological preservation, the security seemed excessive. Sarah had spent years investigating drug cartels, organized crime syndicates, and tech giants, but nothing quite like this. On her second day, while taking note of the lab's layout, Sarah spotted a scientist in the dining hall, nervously glancing around as he clutched a worn leather journal. His pale complexion and anxious mannerisms immediately caught her attention. Deciding to act, she subtly brushed against him as she passed, slipping a folded note into his pocket. "If you want to expose the truth, meet me by the south gate at midnight." Midnight came slowly. When Sarah arrived at the south gate, she found the scientist already there, fidgeting, eyes darting in every direction. He was barely in his 20s, with a face that had seen too much, too soon. He introduced himself as Dr. Alan Mercer, a junior researcher who had stumbled upon Novalife's hidden agenda by accident. "They're not doing what they say they are," he whispered, his voice shaky. "It's not about protecting the environment at all. They're creating things, creatures. They call it Project Genesis." He went on to explain how the project was centered on genetic manipulation, blending human DNA with that of apex predators to enhance strength, agility, and endurance. They claim it's for the future of human evolution, to make us stronger against environmental changes. But the experiments? They're creating monsters, things that shouldn't exist. And it's only getting worse. Sarah's stomach turned, but she stayed focused. She pressed him for details about the other missing persons and the location of any evidence she could use. Alan told her that several journalists and activists were being held in a hidden wing of the lab, isolated from the rest of the facility. But before he could give her more details, headlights swept over the trees as a guard patrol approached. Alan froze, panic flashing across his face. "I can't be seen here," he stammered. "If they find out I talked to you, I'm dead." With that, he bolted into the shadows, leaving Sarah alone. She quickly retreated to her bunk, her mind racing. If what Alan said was true, she was in far more danger than she had anticipated. The next day, her suspicions were confirmed when a security team began inspecting the staff quarters, apparently searching for something, or someone, who didn't belong. She stayed silent, blending in with the other researchers, but a chill crept up her spine. The secrecy of this operation wasn't just tight, it was absolute. 2 nights later, she took a risk and used Alan's stolen keycard to enter the restricted wing. As she moved through the cold, sterile corridors, her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anger. What she found there was worse than she'd imagined. Behind glass enclosures, she saw mutated animals pacing back and forth, their eyes reflecting an unnatural intelligence and aggression. Some bore the features of both human and beast, a grotesque combination that sent shivers down her spine. But the true horror lay in the final room. There, strapped to a hospital bed and hooked up to an array of machines, lay Jonathan Hale, the journalist who had disappeared while investigating Novalife months prior. His skin was pale, his body unnaturally still, yet he was alive. Tubes ran from his arms, feeding unknown substances into his veins. But as she turned, the hairs on her neck prickled. She wasn't alone. Detective Cross, a voice drawled behind her. She whipped around to see Dr. Lydia Kane, Novolife's lead geneticist, flanked by 2 armed guards. Dr. Kane's smile was cold and calculating, the kind that only someone with complete control of the situation could wear. "Did you really think we wouldn't notice an outsider? You've been under surveillance since you arrived." Sarah's hand inched toward her concealed weapon, but Dr. Kane lifted a finger, signaling the guards to raise their rifles. "Don't try it. You're far too valuable to kill just yet." She nodded toward Jonathan's body. "I'd hate to waste such unique material. We're always in need of new test subjects for Project Genesis." Despite her fear, Sarah forced herself to remain defiant. "You'll never get away with this. Interpol is already investigating the disappearances. They'll come for you." Dr. Kane laughed softly. "Interpol? You think they have any power here? You think Novalife would undertake something of this scale without protection from people at the highest levels?" She leaned in closer. "But if you're as resourceful as I've heard, I'm sure you'll make a fascinating subject. A true test of Project Genesis's potential." She ordered the guards to take Sarah to the holding cells, but the adrenaline was coursing through her. As one of the guards reached for her, she lashed out, catching him off guard. In the scuffle, she managed to disarm him, and within moments, she was sprinting down the corridor, alarms blaring behind her. She knew she only had minutes, maybe seconds, to escape. Navigating the maze-like structure, Sarah found herself in the main lab, where cages of mutated animals lined the walls. With a daring leap, she released the latches on the cages. The creatures burst free, snarling and clawing at the guards who rushed in, creating chaos in their wake. Using the distraction, she bolted through the emergency exit, sprinting toward the jungle. The dense foliage offered some cover, but the guards pursued her relentlessly, tracking her every step. Exhausted, she managed to reach a river, her only chance for escape. Without hesitation, she plunged in, letting the current carry her downstream, away from the compound. After what felt like hours, she washed up near a small village on the edge of the jungle. Bruised, exhausted, and soaked to the bone, she found an old satellite phone tucked in her soaked backpack, her last link to the outside world. She made a desperate call to her Interpol contact, relaying the information she'd gathered and the horror she'd witnessed. Within days, an international task force was dispatched, accompanied by a media storm as details of Novolife's twisted experiments leaked to the public. Under public pressure and government scrutiny, Novalife was forced to dismantle its operations, and Dr. Kane, along with other high-ranking officials, disappeared without a trace. The facility was abandoned, but whispers persisted of other laboratories hidden in remote locations, continuing the work of Project Genesis. As the dust settled, Sarah returned home, haunted by the faces of those she couldn't save and the knowledge of Novolife's enduring reach. She knew she had exposed only one piece of a vast, dark conspiracy, a network of secrets that stretched far beyond what she could see. She lay awake many nights, wondering where Dr. Kane had gone and what her next move might be. Because Sarah knew that people like Dr. Kane didn't just vanish, they adapted, finding new places to hide, new shadows to operate in. And Sarah would be waiting, ready to face them once again. The fight against Novalife wasn't over. It had only just begun.